Hi all, I'm Jack from Quilting Dreams and thank you for joining me today. Today we're going to look at a tutorial for a new quilt. You can see the quilt here that we're going to make today. This quilt incorporates a 9-patch cut down, so it's called the disappearing 9-patch, and it also incorporates some embroidery. I like doing embroidery, I like to do the balance of both. So this quilt will show us how to do both of those in the one quilt and still create a really spectacular quilt for yourself or for somebody else. Let's get started. Okay, what you're going to need for today's quilt is you'll need a layer cake. So I'm using Summertime by Camille Roskelley for this one here, and this is what we'll use to create disappearing 9 patches, but keep in mind you can use charm packs. Is it charm packs? I think charm packs for this one. If I've got that wrong, I'll put it in there. But the 5x5 squares for this one here, that will work perfectly. But I just tend to grab the layer cake and then chop that down into 4 5-inch squares. So gives me plenty of fabric to work with there. Now you have a choice with this one here. You could cut down your own fabric, or you could get the Bella Solid Moda layer cake. So you've got a lovely bunch of fabric here that you can use. So you'll need 25 10x10 squares for this one. We will trim it down, but you will need 25 of them for this particular quilt. So that's the next piece that you're going to need. In order to complete strips, I've just got some of the white. So the one that I'm using, and it's the same as for the white layer cake, is a Bella Solid M990098. I also use this for my backing as well, so I tend to just buy a lot of it and have it on hand for when I'm sewing. The other thing you're going to need for this one here is a coordinating fabric. You can see here, it's a navy with a little flower. Now I've run out of that navy with a little flower, but this one here with the navy with the little circles would work just beautifully as well. Anything, if you wanted to use an aqua, a red, a green, any colour will work beautifully with this one. As long as it's in the palette of the layer cake, you'll be able to use it. So I've just used the navy so that I can bring that colour in. So this is the quilt that we're making. We've showed that up on the screen. It's a beautiful quilt. It finishes at 84.5 by 84.5. I've used the climbing mountain quilting pattern on this one here, and I think it just turned out beautifully. So you can see here that we have the star. So we're going to do the embroidered star here. So this embroidered star will then just have 4 corners on it. So we'll do the white. So we do the embroidery and then we put the borders on it so that we get everything the same size. And then we have the disappearing 9 patch here. So we're going to go through how to make this disappearing 9 patch today. Just keep in mind we've got these 2 white squares in the middle, so that was just a balance. That's something that I purposefully did, but you don't have to do that. We then have the navy border. So that, let me have a think. I'm not sure what the width is of that one. So the finishing size is 2.5, so that would be 3 inches wide. And then we've got the external border, and I just used the same fabric as I did with what I've used on the inside here. And that would be 5 inches, I reckon. No, 4.5. So that is 4.5 for the outside border. So this is the quilt we're making today. It's beautiful. I love this Summertime fabric from Camille Roskelley. I think that it really turned out just lovely. So let's get started with doing the disappearing 9 patch. So firstly, what you're going to need is 9 5x5-inch squares, and what I always recommend is make the first one. So do your first one and make that. Make sure you're happy with it, and then go ahead after that and make the rest. So when you're making the rest, you have that opportunity to do your chain piecing, and you can just zip through quite a number at a time. The disappearing 9 patches for this took me maybe half a day to do, maybe not even that. So what I would be doing is making a disappearing 9 patch while I also had the embroidery machine going. So the embroidery machine was doing the other block that we're going to make today, and then I was doing the disappearing 9 patch while that was sewing out. So it became quite an effective exercise. So when I did it, I literally just had stacks of fabric and just popped them through. So because we're going to trim it down and we're not keeping it exactly like this, it doesn't matter how you have it. The only rule for this quilt is that we need the white square in the middle. If we don't have this white square in the middle, that's okay. You can make it any way you like, but that's the way I've made it, is having that white square in the middle for this particular block. So what we're going to do first is we're going to sew each of the rows together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now when you're doing your pressing, make sure that you press, I press to the side, so you press one to one side, then go to the other side and then back again. That way, when you go to nest your seams, as we're pulling this together, you will be able to nest them nicely and get those really nice fine points. So that's really something that's important to consider when you're doing this. If you iron your seams open, no worries, then you'll just go and do the method that you're used to doing. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these together and we'll be back. Okay, so we've stitched up the 3. Well, let's just move them down this way so you can see it. So we've got the rows and we've ironed in one direction. So when I'm doing my ironing, I set my seams and then I iron. What I try and do as best I can is to make sure that I'm not ironing like I would iron clothes. Not that I iron clothes anyway, but I try and just, you know, you pop the iron down, wait, then move it, rather than ironing as though you'd been ironing a pair of jeans. So that's just something to take away if you're trying to work out how, otherwise you can end up with some waves in your blocks. And look, that's okay, but if you can avoid it, that's always good. So what we're going to do now is put our rows together. So we go right sides together, and on that I've try again. Okay, so we put right sides together. And then what we do is you feel that connection. So there's like a nice little connection where the seams meet. And what we want to do is make sure that that's connected in nicely. And we've got it lined up. Pop your pin in. You only need one, but if you wanted to use more, you certainly could. And then do that for the other side. Generally the other side, if you've measured and sewn correctly, will just fall into alignment. So then we're just going to pop that one in, and we'll just one in the corner so we can get the right angle, and one in the other corner. So what I'll do is I'm going to go ahead, put the other one on. I'm going to sew both of these and iron it, and then I'm going to come back. This is a really easy block for you to do. So it's one that's going to take shape really quickly, and I'll try and get this around the right way. There we go, sorry. Didn't bring it across how I did it. And it really doesn't matter with your fabric placement and your colours, because it's all going to work in the end. And because you're about to cut it down, it's going to look just beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and sew the rows together. And once we've done sewing these rows together, we get to start chopping it down again. Okay, so we now have a 9 patch done. So that's the first start, and you can just sit there and piece these all together. Once you've done your first block, it's really just a matter of just getting comfortable and then piecing them all together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to find the halfway point between our two, we're going to find the halfway point. We're going to cut halfway here, and half vertically and half horizontally. Gosh, I'm having a good day, aren't I? So what we want to do is, this is 4, now because they were 5.5, we've sewn down, so it's now 4.5. So now that that's 4.5, we want 2.25 in, which is our middle point. So if I use the lines on the fabric to help line this up. So just doing that now, and then we get our 2.25, which is our halfway point, and we'll just cut straight down there. Now I don't shift it, all I do is move it along, and again using the ruler, 2.25, measure it up using the seams. I use the seams on the block. You can use your mat to be able to work that out, or your ruler, depending on what you've got and what rulers you've got, or what that might look like for you. And then we just cut the other way. It's that simple. We now have what we need. Now what we're going to do is, for this quilt, is we're going to rotate the bottom one, the bottom right, and we're going to rotate the top left. And just like that, we have a totally different block created. Doesn't it look beautiful? So I've specifically, you can see these whites, it just looks so beautiful. We've got the lovely, lovely color palette of those beautiful blues and greens. And then we've got the white that just ties it all together and just gives it that extra lift that it needs. So what we need to do now is we're going to sew both of these together. So our rows, so we'll do our rows again first. Oh, that's the quilting machine. And then we're going to do, so we're going to sew the rows, and then we'll sew the rows together. So I'm going to go ahead now and sew them, because we've seen what that looks like, and I'm going to come back and show you what this finished block looks like. But doesn't that look stunning? I love the colors, and I love how they all work together so beautifully. Okay, so this is our finished block. This is the disappearing 9 block. Disappearing 9 block. When I've trimmed this down, it's at 13.5 by 13.5. So all of your blocks will be 13.5 by 13.5. But I love it. I love how this block turns out. There are so many different ways you can coordinate this block. You can do one turns, you can swap things over. You can pretty much do anything you like with this particular block, and it will still come out just wonderfully. This is how I've done this one, but you can do it any which way you like, and it will just be perfect. This is a really good, easy block. You've got a few intersecting corners to get right, but other than that, when we're stitching these together, it's just a matter of piece them together, like put them together and sew them down, and it will just work out beautifully. So this is block number 1 of the 2 blocks that we're going to create. So I'm just going to grab block number 2 and let's get stitching. Okay, so I'm not sure what I've just done to my camera, so it's just changed from being quite close in to being a little bit further out, so we'll see how it goes. I'm not sure what I did, but what we're going to do now is the star block. So this was a practice one, and I ended up making the block just a little bit bigger so that we got to our 13.5 by 13.5, but we're going to use this one for today's purposes so that I can show you how to do it. So this star is one that is just in the embroidery files that I have. On the embroidery program, I use the Janome embroidery program, but I believe most embroidery programs have a star, so find your favorite star. You want to make sure your star is no bigger than 5 inches by 5 inches, so make sure it's a little bit smaller than that before you go ahead and start doing them all, because you're just going to use one of the 5 by 5 squares that you have when you've cut up your layer cake. So we've got our 5 by 5 here, which is great. Then what we're going to do is embroider that on. So what I do is I use the heat and bond on the back of the top layer here. So that heat and bond, there's just a layer here that will peel off when I go ahead and do the embroidery. So on the back of your fabric, we've got the heat and bond, and then on the back of your white piece, you want to use tearaway. So I have the tearaway on here, and when I've finished, I literally just rip that off, and that one's gone, and then just scratch in the middle, or you can do it any which way you like, just to get that away. Normally it comes out pretty quickly, and then we just want to take that one out as well. So we'll just pull that out, and then we've got our square, man, I'm having a good day, our star all ready to go. So that was how we do that. I would say every embroidery program will have a star of some description. You just want to make sure the star is no bigger than 5 by 5. If you do want a bigger star, then you'll just need to make sure that you cut your pieces of fabric bigger. You may choose just to do them all in navy blue, and that would look absolutely incredible if you did them all in navy blue. And you could cut them to be 6 or 7 inches so that they still fit in on your piece. So what we're going to do now is, when I create my first block, like I have been saying, I do one block at a time. But what I would do when I'm creating all of them is I would do strip piecing. So I would create a strip which looked like, well, let me just go take this down, which looked like this. So I would have 2.5 by 2.5, and then the width of my star fabric here, keep in mind finished product is 13.5 by 13.5, and this one is a little bit smaller today for the practice one that we're using. So I would stitch, and then I would subcut these down and have them all ready to go. So this is a really easy block. All we're going to do is we're going to stitch the side pieces on first, and we're going to stitch the 2 end pieces to each of the top and bottom pieces, and we'll pop back when we've done that. Okay, so we've now stitched the side panels on, and I've ironed them to the inside, and we've stitched the top and bottom. Now just remember, if you were doing a whole bunch of blocks of these, I would strip piece these and then subcut them down so that you've just got them perfect and you can go, and it's really efficient and it's really accurate. So it's something worth looking at when you are thinking about doing it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to pin these to the top and bottom. So we're going to right sides together, think about making sure we've got a nice connection in there, nesting those seams, and we're going to do the top one, nest the seam, and that'll just sit in there beautifully. You're not going to, this is a beautiful simple block, but it actually makes the quilt look really effective when it's all pieced together, and I really like it. But these come together really quickly. This whole quilt comes together really quickly. You'll have it done in, depending on how you go about it, you can have it all done in a weekend and have it ready for that special someone, a birthday, or just to drape over, having a fresh one to drape over your couch, ready for, the winter months if you're going into winter. Now I'm going to sew 1/4 inch from the top and from the bottom. I'm going to iron them to one side and come back and show you both the finished block. Okay, so this is both of our blocks. These are the only 2 blocks that you're going to make, and you will just, it'll be like you'll do one and then the other and just continue that flow down, and then you'll get a lovely pattern that cascades through your quilt. Now what you can see here, this was my test block, and this is why it's so important to do test blocks when you are creating quilts, is you'll see that this one here is a 1/2 inch all the way around, smaller than what it needs to be. So this one's measuring in at 13 inches by 13, and this one's at 13.5 by 13.5. That's why at the start of every quilt that you do, it's really good to just make one, make sure you've got it right, and then go ahead and make the rest of them. Not only that, we've got the colour to consider. You've got to love your quilt that you make, and if you don't, it takes a long time to make it. So I love how this has turned out. I love the colour placement. I love how the colours that are in it. I find that Camille Roskelley makes absolutely beautiful fabric that I thoroughly enjoy sewing with. So these are the 2 blocks for this quilt. So then you'll go ahead, like we talked about previously, after you've put them all together, then you want to create your borders. So this one has a double border, but you don't have to use the double border if you don't want to. You could just use a single border and it will still turn out just beautifully. So again, the size of your inner border will be, you'll need to cut it at 3 inches, but it'll finish at 2.5, and you'll need to cut the outside border at 4.5 inches, and that will finish at 4.25, but 4 and 4 once you've got your binding on there as well. I've used for the binding of this one, I've used the same color, the same fabric as the inner border. But I really love this. This Climbing Mountains edge-to-edge quilting pattern has become one of my favorites. I'm using it on a lot of quilts at the moment and I'm just loving it. And these quilts are just turning out beautifully. So I would highly encourage you to have a go at this quilt. You've just got your disappearing 9 patch, a little bit of embroidery, but these are some really lovely blocks that give you an absolutely fantastic output. So that's our quilt for today. Now what I did want to show you as well, next month we will be doing a memory quilt. So this is a memory quilt that I've made just recently. I've just got to be careful because there's a lot of information on these quilts that are personal to the person that's receiving this quilt. But the one that I'm doing next month is for my mum, and so she won't mind if the information is shown. But what I'm using for this is Laurie Holt fabric for this one here, and we're using the 5-inch squares, and then we're integrating this beautiful personalized memory information for each and every quilt. Then on top of that, this one doesn't have it, but it'll also have photos in it. So next month I would highly recommend that you join me as we create this one. So there's just some, it's a little bit hard to see. Hold on one moment. Okay, so up the top here, you'll see that I've embroidered my story. And I've used a wool textured embroidery for this one here, but that sits up the top of the quilt. So it's just a sneaky peek of what it's going to look like. And then here, this particular person is turning 50. So I have integrated the 50 on here using the applique on the embroidery machine, and then again using that wool embroidery saying "and fabulous." So this is just amazing. I love how these quilts have turned out, and I hope you join me next month when we create another one of these quilts. They're simple, they're effective, and they are just beautiful to give to that special someone in your life. Thank you so much for joining me on today's tutorial. I've thoroughly enjoyed making this quilt. It's a great beginner-friendly quilt, and I'm sure you'll enjoy making it as well. It allows you to balance off your love for piecing quilts and your love for embroidery. So it's a great quilt for those that love to do both. And like I said, I was creating the disappearing 9 patches at the same time as embroidering. So you've got 2 machines running at the same time. It's really effective, really efficient, and it's a beautiful, beautiful end product that you get out of this quilt. Stay tuned for next month. That's where we're going to do the My Story quilt. And I really look forward to making that with you all and showing you how I go about making the My Story quilts. Have a lovely day. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I will see you again back here next month. Bye for now.